Most people think that electricity happens when you flip a light switch. They don't even understand the simplest of electricity building blocks like voltage, amperage, or resistance. This lack of knowledge makes it difficult to make an informed decision on the purchase of electrical equipment, and sometimes they fall prey to companies that take advantage of that lack of electrical knowledge. The purpose of this seminar is to provide basic knowledge of electricity, the history of electrotherapy, and what to look for in a clinical microcurrent device. Voltage can be considered as potential. See all the little red balls in the water tower? Those are like electrons sitting in a battery just waiting to be used in an electrical circuit. The more volts, the more power is available to the circuit when needed. Amperage is the rate of flow, or the number of electrons that pass between two fixed points, represented by the red lines on the screen. The more electrons flowing, the higher the amperage. If the path of the electron flow gets restricted, like the pipe getting thinner as shown by the red lines on the example, the electron flow slows down and can sometimes even stop. This is known as resistance, and resistance is measured in ohms. Frequency is how many times per second the rate of flow is turned on and off. Using electricity to treat human conditions has been around for thousands of years. The first recorded use was by the Greeks in 200 BC. They would use the electric charge of a torpedo fish, around 200 volts, to treat gout, headaches, and other ailments. In 1800, Volta developed the first practical battery that could store energy for later use. This was one of the great moments in the world. Practical portable electrical devices could now be developed. By 1870, battery-operated devices were so popular that this electric belt was sold in the Sears catalog. It was claimed to cure all sorts of maladies. Of interest is that the belt sold for $18, which was the same price of a shotgun in the same catalog. Today a shotgun would cost around $1,200, so there was quite a high value placed on that electric belt. After the 1870s, all sorts of electrical devices were made to treat anything and everything. Things began to get a bit crazy with all the cure claims being made, and in 1906, at the urging of the AMA and other scientific organizations, the FDA was created. By the 1920s, most electrical cure devices had been discredited and taken off the market. In 1965, researchers Melzack and Wall published the gate control theory of pain. Their theory was that if you flooded an area of pain with sensory stimulation, it would get to the brain first because it travels through a faster pathway. Because it gets to the brain first, it effectively closes the gate on the pain. This published paper had a major impact on research in the area of using electricity for pain control. The experiments that came after the Melzack and Wall research led to the conclusion that implanted electrodes could effectively block pain when electrical impulses were sent into the body at very high or very low frequencies. The prevailing theory was that the body would produce natural opiates in addition to closing the gate on the pain. When it was discovered that surface electrodes used to find the best implantation site were just as effective as implanted electrodes, transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation, or TENS, was born. Here's some important information about the FDA and microcurrent. All microcurrent stimulators are TENS devices, and all TENS must carry an FDA 510K certification as a Class II device. Without that certification, it cannot legally be sold in the United States. A 510K certification is your assurance of the product's high-quality standards and it's safe and effective to use. Do not purchase a device that does not have 510K certifications. Accept no excuses. Some low-powered TENS devices can now be legally sold in the United States without a prescription and sold over the counter to anyone and to be used by anyone. In 1976, Thomas Wing, an electrical engineer, licensed acupuncturist, and chiropractor, was looking to develop the best electroacupuncture device. Using his knowledge of electrical engineering and acupuncture, he created and patented the Acuomatic. It was the first clinical microcurrent device. As Dr. Wing used his new machine, he observed results far beyond the expectations of traditional acupuncture. He had no explanation for the healing capabilities that he saw, and he continued his observations, publishing them in the monthly Chiropractic Economics Journal. The Arndt-Schulz law of physiology states that a weak stimuli increases physiological activity, and a very strong stimuli inhibits or abolishes that activity. This was further confirmed by the Chang study, which showed that microamperage sped up the healing in an area, but high amperage actually inhibited the healing. In the 1984 Chang study, direct DC current was applied to skin. It was found to increase ATP production and protein synthesis. Of course, ATP fuels the metabolic chemical reactions of the body. The more ATP, the more energy is available. This important study provides an explanation for microcurrent's healing power, and it confirmed that higher power outputs can actually diminish healing. In his landmark book, The Body Electric, Dr. Robert Becker discovered the current of injury and the current of healing. This current of healing is a continuous DC current in the microamp range. It's how the body talks to itself in response to injury and healing. These findings further confirmed the findings of the Chang study. This screen is a summary of all the benefits that have been associated with microcurrent therapy. Please take a few moments and review these. So, over 30 years after the first microcurrent device was manufactured, over 200 peer-reviewed studies continue to show how the body responds better to a whisper than a yell. It's important to understand that all microcurrent devices are not created equal. Dr. Wing developed the gold standard of these parameters when he developed his first machine. Here's a list of what's commonly accepted as what's needed to become a true clinical microcurrent stimulator. And these are important enough that we will review them individually in the next segment. The device must be a constant current generator. When you set the device to deliver 200 microamps of subsensory stimulation, you need to use a machine that can deliver a constant current regardless of the skin resistance. This type of circuit is referred to as a constant current generator. As the resistance changes up or down, the current will remain constant. For a constant current generator to work properly, there must be sufficient voltage available. This is a critical point where many devices fail to deliver. To overcome the resistance in the circuit, probes, and skin, at least 50 volts needs to be available to the system. Many systems use far less than that, potentially creating a situation where the current selected is not actually being delivered. This is an important place to talk about resistance. There are two types of resistance in the body when you're dealing with microcurrent therapy. There's ohmic resistance, and that's the type of resistance that's in the circuit, lead wires, probe electrodes. The power must increase to overcome this resistance. Sometimes it can't, and the delivery fails. There's also a capacitive resistance. The skin and underlying tissues are capacitive in nature. This resistance changes with different frequencies and can be overcome using ultra-high frequencies or ultra-low frequencies below 1. So make sure that your microcurrent unit can select frequencies below 1, or it will encounter both types of resistance, both ohmic and capacitive. Your unit should max out at about 600 microamps. Outputs above this become very sensory and can lead to muscle contraction. In addition, it can prevent the device from being sold over the counter without a prescription. This low output range is the whisper that we talked about in earlier slides versus the shout. Most microcurrent techniques use a frequency below 1 Hertz or 1 pulse per second. When this ultra-low frequency is selected and your unit uses a 50% duty cycle, the output approaches Becker's current of healing and is the most effective type of current. This is a super important parameter many devices do not use. Many stimulators use a very narrow duty cycle, sometimes measured in milliseconds, too brief to approach Becker's current of healing. A 50% duty cycle means that if the current is pulsed at 1 pulse per second, the current will be delivered for 50% of that time, or 1/2 of a second, versus 250 milliseconds some other machines use. So more time equals more energy equals more stimulation. Also, when you use frequencies below 1, the current becomes a continuous DC current, exactly like that used in the Chang study and in the work done by Becker. Dr. Wing discovered that by alternating the polarity every 2.5 seconds, a push-pull of ions occurred as positive and negative electrons were being attracted and then repelled. He described this as a tidal wave effect, gently building until a great amount of energy effect had been created. He named this the tsunami wave, not because of any special waveform, but because of the tidal wave effect. The best method to deliver the microcurrent energy is through a 2-wet Q-tip probe technique. Use a liquid that conducts electricity. Best is actually just plain tap water. Do not use any oil-based products. Oil does not conduct electricity. Waveforms for microcurrent are relatively unimportant as long as they are a square or modified square wave. Some machines might have settings to vary the leading or trailing edge of the square for patient comfort, but since microcurrent is usually subsensory, patient comfort is generally not an issue. Don't be confused by claims of special waveforms. The muscles react perfectly to a square or modified square wave. The rest is just fluff. The concept behind microcurrent facial work is quite simple. Stimulate organs in the tendons of some of the facial muscles to relax and others to tighten. This is accomplished with the right equipment and the right technique. In addition, the equipment can be used to stimulate PEP points or power energy points on the face. When done properly, the results are immediate and apparent.